Okay. All right, I'd like to go ahead and call this October 24th, Ag Planning and Tourism Community Development Meeting to order, 1 p.m. First order of business is to accept the minutes from the September 19, 2023 meeting. So moved by Dan, second by Dave. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries. Okay, tourism updates, Laura.
Okay, I've been told to be quick, so I'll be as quick as I can. So just a couple of quick things on tourism. We held, we called it the events event. We are trying to do at least one, possibly two, like educational seminars intended to kind of help the tourism community get access to resources, get help or whatever. So one of the things that we know with tourism that is drawing people into the county and that gets significant hits on all of our social media platforms is in fact events. So we get varying degrees of request for help, all the way from give me money to how can you help me with my event, et cetera, et cetera. So we've made it clear, give me money isn't an option, but we're trying to figure out like what resources can we offer you. So we put on an event at Scotland Brewing. It was very well attended. There were, I don't know, 30, 35 people there. We had a forum of panelists that are experienced in putting on events, including Rebecca Breeze from the fair, MJ Packer, who does Woolen Arts, Maple and a few others. Nushana Reddy, who is from the Salem Chamber of Commerce, and then also Jesse from Black Dog. So there was a lot of information that was disseminated, and I think it was very well received. But again, the idea is we're trying to get feedback within the limited budget that we have to determine, without just handing you cash, what can we be doing to support events, which might be social media support and a number of other things. But again, I think the event overall went well, and the information was appreciated. It was worth it. Any questions on that? Okay. Just a quick update on the 250th, the history anniversary. So you may or may not have seen Warren County. I'm pretty sure that they received a grant. They did a really nice job of putting up a 250th anniversary website. The original intent, I believe, was to partner more with us. We did provide them with information and points of interest. It is on their website, but I believe our 250th committee is sort of looking to do something in addition to that. So we are still evaluating how to help with website, social media, et cetera. We've also reached out to Saratoga County, who's indicated that they may be interested in partnering on putting things together, because I think, and also the Saratoga tourism region as a whole believes that we have an opportunity through the 250th to really highlight how much history there really is here in the region. So again, we want to make it more than just local. We want to make it both local and regional. Questions on that?
Laura, it looks like there's a committee down at Cambridge too, working towards the 250. So I hope at some point all these little fractured groups are going to kind of get some sort of cohesiveness.
That's my concern. But I will say that if they're looking to us for funding, my response is going to be, who else are you talking to? That, you know, I think just having, as you said, a bunch of factions and groups, they may be very good at coming up with ideas, but some other group may have had a similar idea, and we want to pool resources and get, you know, as much cohesive direction as possible.
Right. Sometimes we're stronger together, so I want to make sure that we're talking.
And in this case, I think as a region, we are stronger together. Yeah.
Do you know who else are together?
I'd have to.
I did.
Because
We don't see it.
Place the whole good meeting, I guess they sit on it. But they're rolling in the same direction, so I want to make sure
Yeah,
that.
wonder if it was Tim and Ken Godfrey.
Laura, when they first came and that was brought up, the Washington County Historical Society president and was Fort Edward Historical Society also. There was talk that there could be money given to Washington County Historical Society, right? And fund.
We approved that.
Yeah, so we did put out some money.
We have not as of yet. What we have is we are going to use the ARPA funding that will be in next year's tourism budget. So I have a preliminary list of requests from the 250th committee. I have had them meet with Black Dog to ascertain, like, if we're gonna help you with social media and website, what does that look like? So basically, the committee put a number out there that, which I don't have it in front of me, but this is what we think we need. And I said, okay, well, again, we're not necessarily gonna fund you in cash. For some things we might, but for help with this, you know, we're gonna pay Black Dog or other media outlets to do that. So I wanted to make sure that they were meeting and talking so that we had a real handle on the real cost. But yes, we will be putting money towards promoting the 250th out of our ARPA funding next year.
And wasn't this was it a 5 or a 10-year event? They said they spread it out over quite a few years. I was surprised when I heard that.
It's 5 years, but there are actually places that are doing it over a 10-year period. But the key years are probably going to be 2024 to 2026 or 7, something like that.
Yeah, I thought that part of the Washington County Historical Society was going to be to reach out to those splinter groups to try to bring them all into one big avenue. I thought that was the intent behind it. At least that's what
That was the umbrella.
Yeah.
So I think that is true. I also know from the committee that, you know, one of the issues that they had was that they were seeking to recruit volunteers. But they are also a volunteer committee. And unfortunately, I mean, I've asked our planner Pamela to attend those meetings so that we have some idea of what's going on. But I think they're in very early stages and maybe you're still kind of waiting to get slightly better organized. But again, from my standpoint, I don't, as a county representative, want to just be throwing, I want to know that you've talked to everybody that's reasonable, you've formulated a plan, you've got a decent budget, that we're working locally and regionally, everybody has a voice, and we don't, as Al said, have 15 different groups doing 15 different things.
And that's what I thought the focus of this group was going to be, was to try to draw those all together so they were working as a unit.
And I think as they learn about them, they will.
Yeah, and yeah, again, I agree that that's the intent, but I think it's kind of early stages and there's still more organization to be done.
Have we heard anything from Isle of New York in regards to whether they're going to, you know, have a business promotion of 250?
So there is actually, I Love New York is already starting to do some advertising, collaboration, et cetera. Unfortunately, I just have not had the time to attend those meetings.
Okay.
But they are promoting and design, again, they're going to be feeding off of what the regions are doing, but I Love New York will also have a separate meeting. I will also say that, as I've mentioned before, we worked really hard at the Capital Sarasota Tourism Region to get a $750,000 grant to promote the region. One of the things that will be a part of that promotion is the regional celebrations of the 250th. Because I think that is a very good reason to travel to the entire region. And every single one of the counties in the region has very good history to be promoted. So there will be other funding besides our funding that will be going towards regional recognition.
About the half of that.
Laura, do you know, is there a database that identifies all the historical markers in Washington County?
I think
that's the state, all the historical markers are registered with the state, right?
So full credit to Pam Landy. Yes, there is a database, but that database is not complete. There's a whole bunch of other things that, I think deserve recognition. So through the points of interest database that Pamela has created, although it has yet to be published, and hopefully with new access to GIS software, we can get that done next year. She created a database that is what was forwarded onto Warren County when they did their website. So it is published. It ended up with some very strange geolocating coordinates. So like a couple of our markers ended up in Vermont. So there's some corrections that have to be made, but we supplied all of that information to Warren County GIS where they developed that website, so.
So that's something that could be put out there for any group.
If we were founded in 1784, wouldn't 250th be in 2034?
This is the national 250th, 1776.
No. We,
No, wait, what year is it?
That was Washington County 250.
No, it's national,
United States.
United States,
We're more important.
of course.
Okay.
Because we were late.
I thought, okay.
Okay,
That's an interesting question on what they're using
Wait, wait, no.
for the national. Is it
so-
when we declared independence, when we won,
It's
to
when-
say that it was real? You know, when,
No, it's when the war ended.
that was 81.
Right, exactly, yes.
Still going on.
That's the big celebration.
Before we go on to tourism, so I had a question for you.
Middle act.
All right, you go first. Where's that short-term rental? Are we trending?
That,
I'm looking at the money guy because you know year over year.
well, we just sent one down,
They need,
Laura. The number is escaping, but the number was down.
Number was down slightly.
Yeah, right, Laura, right?
They were, it's very slight.
I only-
It's down
I
just a
caught a
little
glimpse
bit.
of the email the other day when we sent the number down and it was, it was down.
It was
Well,
down
I
a
would
little
like to
bit
see-
last month and a little bit, but again, not by significant numbers.
So the piece to that is that Airbnb, we only have the agreement with Airbnb.
Correct.
They have created what's called air coverage, which is an insurance policy that's now on every single rental. Wasn't there before.
Gotcha.
So that's additional dollars. The renter,
Pre-tax.
yeah,
So,
it's another pre-tax fee that pushes, keeps the revenue the same or the expense the same to the renter. But on our level, it reduces
Yeah.
down what we're gonna get paid on it. Yeah, and the person renting the property. Yeah,
Gotcha.
okay. I got, that went into effect beginning of this
I
year.
think it was a little over 9,000 this month is the number that's in my head, but I mean, not drastically down, but down.
Okay.
Yeah, very small.
Okay.
Dana?
Dana, you had a question? Sorry.
Laura, did you get invited in September? Did you get an invite from the Peter Canal Alliance for a stakeholder? meeting in September?
Probably.
Are you or somebody?
Pamela regularly attends the Peter Canal meetings as well as the Champlain Canalway Working Group meetings.
Right.
So yes, we do maintain a presence with that, and that is going to be coming up a little bit later in the agenda.
Thanks.
Any other tourism questions before we move on to solar? All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Skelly at the last committee meeting had a question on.
I'm getting blamed.
Yeah, you are, you get it all.
That's right, on
There's
what
no blame here.
it's education. On how the notification processes work for solar, especially in respect to. At what point does the Ag and Farmland Protection Board get notified? So this complicated flow chart that I passed you, I can summarize this and say that there are three sort of key processes to this. First is a pre-application process, then there is an application process, and then it goes on to permitting, final design, and construction. So in the pre-application process, this is before they have submitted any kind of notification to ORIS. And by the way, the other thing to let you know is we've talked about the fact that right now, any solar project greater than 25 megawatts must go through ORIS, cannot go through the old Article 10 process. But 20 to 25 has a choice and below 20 does not. That is going away. There is no longer going to be an Article 10 process for solar at all. They are all going to go through ORIS. Which goes back to statewide control of everything. So just letting you know that the whole Article 10 permitting will still exist for other types of renewable energy, but not for solar.
Can you refresh my mind, because maybe you have to start right from scratch. What is Article 10?
Article 10 is the state permitting process for large scale energy products, which could be wind, solar, you know, whatever they are. So Article 10 came under intense scrutiny because it is a process that takes a long time, many years. And as the need for renewable energy started increasing and the state wanted to decrease the time to market to get new projects built, that is what caused the creation of ORIS, which is the Office of Renewable Energy and Siting. And ORIS was created to effectively bypass Article 10 and shorten the processing and permitting time so that these projects could be, instead of like 10-year process, they are mandated to permit projects within a 1-year process. So the Article 10 process was complicated, lengthy, expensive, etc. It was replaced on large scale solar with ORIS
And that just happened recently?
about 4 years ago.
Well, then, yeah, I'm just still trying to understand this. My town, which I dealt with at the norm. Everybody keeps telling me that. We had 220 megawatt solar farms going.
Which would not go through ORIS.
And when we
Right.
never went through the county, we had nothing that was all within the town planning board.
Correct.
And now we've got one in the final process in the planning board. They had a public hearing last night for another 20 megawatt one. And that one I didn't think went through.
Again, only 25 megawatt and greater are required to.
Oh,
go
I thought you
through
said
ORIS.
they're going to change it to where.
They are going to change it.
But it hasn't happened yet.
Anything that is in the middle of Article 10 permitting will continue through that process thing,
Okay.
but for new
Yes,
projects,
that wasn't to be, okay.
right, then it will all go through ORIS.
So when that occurred. If they want to put another 20-year megawatt in and the process starts next year. I mean,
And
we
it's a
get,
1-year process to get a permit.
and is the town out of the picture?
Can you explain that? So,
So good.
this is.
You might answer my question.
Okay. So, again, the question was sort of brought about, it's like, who is supposed to notify who, when, so that people have information. When it comes to the pre-application process, the solar company, the applicant, is required to notify the municipal CEO, which would be the supervisor or mayor. The supervisor or mayor may notify other interested parties like, related residents. It could be the county. It could be anybody that the local municipality thinks ought to be aware or ought to be involved in the discussion of the new solar project. So that's an initial direct meeting with the solar company to the municipality. In addition to that, 60 days prior to actually submitting the application, the solar company and the the solar company is required to do it, has to have a public meeting for public comment. Right, but again, there is no requirement for the solar company to notify anybody except the municipality. So then the assumption is, and again, you can look through all of these color-coded code charts. So they go through their environmental, their permitting, it's their initial discovery process. Then it comes to the application process. The application process requires a notice of intent to file an application. When that notice of intent goes out, the solar company is required to publish it in a local paper. It is required, a notice is required to be mailed to all residents within a 1-mile radius of the project. The state legislators for the area and any local agencies that were part of the pre-application meeting. So for example, if the county was invited to the pre-application meeting, the county would be required to be noticed. But again, up until this point, there is absolutely no requirement that the county be notified that any solar projects are happening anywhere. So when the notice of intent is mailed out, if the municipality believes that this is going to be a contentious issue, or there is additional work that's going to be needed, that additional work always costs money. So, and we have discussed this in the past, but it's been a while, there is what's called an intervenor fund. Solar companies are required to set aside $1,000 for every megawatt of power. So if it's a 20 megawatt system, it's $20,000 for intervenor funds, which means that again, the local municipality where the application is can request access to those funds to help in the discovery process. It could be for attorneys, it could be for research, it could be for anything that creates as level a playing field as possible so that the local municipalities are getting the information that they need. But again, that's not coming from the county, it's coming from the local municipality. So the final phase is construction. This is the only place where there is any legal requirement that the county be notified that that project is going on. And that is that the county highway superintendent is required to attend a pre-construction meeting with the solar company. But again, by this point, this project is now ready to be built. So the only way that the county has of knowing what's going on is if the local municipalities and local planning boards involve the planning. So that's one thing. Secondly,
Okay, just a quick question in. So what is the purpose? You don't have any authority, what's the purpose of the county commission going? The highway.
the highway superintendent, well, I mean, there's
Involved by the county or the town.
there's no involvement by the county or the town, but the highway superintendent in terms of traffic and other things that would affect the county.
Public safety is your
And
biggest.
public safety is
Is
an
that town-
issue.
Is that
Correct.
town roads that all affect it, does it affect the county?
Yeah, no, it affects your public safety. If they have a fire, if they have anything of that magnitude, that's where the big concern is.
Well, so I guess my question would be, why did it go through public safety rather than going through highway? About the public safety.
I didn't write the laws.
No, I'm just.
Why did Ray Hayes not go through the county attorney? It's the way, our government's run.
And it seemed like they had to require the town highway superintendent, because if it's on a town road, it impacts it.
Okay, I just wanted.
So again, there would be like, like through the town planning processes, et cetera, there may or may not be a referral to the county, but again, the question was, who's officially supposed to notify the county? The only requirement based on state law is at that construction phase. However, the ORS process, all the large solar projects are effectively managed by ORS, the Office of Renewable Energy. Ag and Markets has heavy involvement and NYSERDA has heavy involvement. Ag and Markets, and they all meet on a bi-weekly basis to discuss projects. Ag and Markets is a courtesy, but again, not state law. When that notice of intent is filed, i.e. meaning the solar company has submitted an application for a process. Ag and Markets will notify the local Ag and Farmland Protection Board. In our case, I believe, and I'm hoping maybe Deb can confirm this, I believe the notifications go to the Board of Supervisors and likely to Laura Chadwick, who's real property. But again, that notification is coming from Ag and Markets, not ORS and not the solar company. That's simply a courtesy to the Ag and Farmland Protection Board. But there is no requirement for a hearing, et cetera. It goes back to, and I think the thing to pay attention to is if you as a municipality get notice that there is a project coming, I would suggest involving any agencies or entities that you think might be interested as early as possible, because then they have to be part of the notification process later on. So that's it. Did I answer your question?
No.
What was the question?
No. So the first one, it's a series of three. So when was this changed? When did this occur? I didn't think about it.
When did what occur?
The change where ORS can now have oversight of any project of any size.
It's coming. We were informed by Ag and Markets. It's in the process of being changed.
Any idea roughly? They give you any idea?
Timeframe? No.
I can find out. What we were told is anything that is going through Article 10 will continue. It's just going to be for new projects. So I will find out at what point that trigger gets pulled for new projects.
The second question I have, so local zoning no longer would apply at all, correct? So if we have zoning that only allows solar in commercial zones, that's no longer an issue.
That hasn't changed. That is still based on the same ORIS regulations, and the regulations say that ORIS is required to take into consideration local zoning, but they can ignore anything that they consider to be unduly burdensome.
Two birds.
Right.
Okay.
For which there is no
It's an
clear
opinion.
definition.
How about decommissioning? Do we require a cashier? Do they still have the authority now to determine what the decommissioning is?
I'm not aware of any changes that have been made to that. Again, all I'm really reiterating here is kind of what the permitting process is. The only change that I'm aware of is the fact that at some point, Article 10 is going to be phased out.
So on the bottom of this, does say decommissioning, but really nothing happens. To me, that's the bigger part of any of it, because if you're at a smaller family farm, put solar on their farms, and 20 years from now, those LLCs dissolve, that family farm that is staying, they can't afford to stay in business right now, we using this money as a resource. What happens in 20 years when they can't afford to pull those solar panels off? If you don't have a cash surety, it requires work and legal costs on behalf of this. That's what I would look for. We did spend a lot of money to redo it. And this is what I was afraid of. I thought when they, and I think it's not about the burdensome side of it, or I believe the state's getting closer to the goal that they want to meet 2035. There's no way they're gonna meet it. And now they're taking any project that has a pulp and they're gonna put it under their orders. I predicted it would happen, and it plays right into the hands of all these vipers. Right.
It is through every facet of government, not just solar, it's everything.
Oh, yeah, and then they're gonna come to you and say, they're gonna go to the IDA and say, tax breaks, do this, there's just, they're all vipers. Everyone.
So I will look at it. Yes, I don't know what changes there have been made. I do know that there were a lot of discussions during the last couple of years about whether local municipalities could require a decommissioning plan and bonds to potentially fund that. That's been up and down. I haven't looked at that, but I will look at it.
Thanks.
In our site plan review, even though towns and counties have that much say, in order to prove by the site plan, the one that we have going in is required, they've already made it out of the decommissioning amount that was. We had consultants help us try to figure out what that amount should be, and then every 5 years, we have to review that, and if it looks like the decommissioning deposit bond does not cover it. They're required, whoever happens to be the owner of the LLC, which this one's been sold 3 times, and it's not even built yet, is required to bump the bond to make
That's a
sure.
performance bond that would require legal execution later on. Cost of the time.
Yeah,
It's not cash.
it's, there's a bond. The money is sitting in a bond recipient. Al would know more about this, but a bond holder is holding the bond that's there, so.
Do they pay those right away? Hey, Roger, bond, do they require legal execution to get those paid out?
The bond use, surety and security bonds usually conditional on either meeting a condition or not meeting a condition, so you have to proceed to show the condition to the minimum. Generally.
Cash would be.
Unless the corporation says, I agree with you, it wasn't that, and then.
Cash. For- Yeah.
Right, you'd rather have it, but you still have to meet, in order to access the money, you have to be agreeing to proceeding to access the money.
Yeah, they would have.
Presumably,
That's
the
what they
termination.
have their bond.
The
Yeah, there's-
termination would have to be
there's-
raised at the term.
Yeah, in the contract, yeah, there is, there's certain things, requirements that everybody has to do towards it. In fact, if 20 years is enough and they walk away, that money is sitting there, we're supposed to have access to it. Or even if they aren't keeping up, there's another, I don't know if it's a separate one or all tied to the same one, but the upkeep around it, like brush if the fence is falling in or whatever that they have where it's fenced around and stuff, all that should be getting maintained through a prepaid. Yeah, cause we had to, I didn't know, cause I called to see, you know, we have to set up something with the bank and our attorney said, no, this goes all into a bond holder. Somebody that's their job, they hold these long-term bonds.
But did,
So does this extend from to the smaller solar fields that the state will then take over all siting?
My understanding is that all permitting for solar, which would be community solar projects and, you know, like 20 megawatt commercial solar projects, permitting projects would be taken over by Works.
So they will overrule everything.
All right, so Dana, I will double check on if there's been any specific regulatory changes to decommissioning. And when the takeover of the smaller scale solar projects happens.
Thank you.
I will check on that. Any other questions?
got a question about solar? Right. Anybody else?
Okay. Another very uncheerful subject, and this is Dana, this kind of goes to your question about canals. So, as a reminder, a little over 5 years ago, as the Empire State Trail was coming through, the trail north of the Fort Ann area up through Whitehall is on State Route 4, and you get to play nice with tractor trailers going 80 miles an hour. So as a county, we worked really hard to try and figure out a way to get that trail off of Route 4 and along the canal. We had an award from LWRP to do design and part construction of the trail, and then we also had an award from Canal Corp. So we recently, this committee had a discussion that because of significant impediments put in the way by CP Rail, it became impossible within the time frame to work on that 7-mile segment of the trail. So we decided to shorten the segment and basically get the trail from Fort Ann up to Ryder Road, where it would then cross back onto Route 4, and we would work in future time to try and get it back on the canal and off of State Route 4. We had permission from the board to execute a new contract with the engineering design team through Arbella. We had permission from LWRP to extend the contract. We had verbal permission from Canal Corp to match the extension of their grant, which ends this December, to match the extension to February of 2025, which is when the LWRP grant went. We just executed a new contract with Labella to create the design for that shortened segment of trail. When I got a call from Canal Corp, and they had completely pulled the rug out from underneath us. We have now been told that we cannot use Canal Corp money for a quote trail that goes to nowhere. We cannot use Canal Corp money for a trail unless it is fully designed. We will not get a permit from Canal Corp to do any construction on their land unless not only is it fully designed, it's going to be constructed, but we have money in the bank or some way of proving that we can maintain the trail into the future. So needless to say, the timing of that was very bad. You know, that leaves me with 2 months to address these issues with Canal Corp. Do I think that if we can get everybody into a room and have further discussion, might we be able to address this? Possibly, but the issue is timing. We will not get another extension from LWRP. If we do not move forward with doing the design and some level of work on LWRP fairly soon, we're not going to have time to do it. So that left me with the option of, is there a way to split out the Canal Corp funding? And they have said that we can pick any project anywhere on the canal and we can use the $150,000 to do that. The problem with it is it's a 50-50 match grant. So while we can spend $150,000, somebody has to come up with $150 in cash to match that. So there are projects that I think could benefit from that, but again, we've got 2 months until this grant expires. We did determine that through a reduction in the level of design and permitting, that we could potentially continue using the LWRP money to get the design, but again, the issue is if Canal Corp will not give us permits to do anything, we can't do construction. Without construction, I now have a problem with match, because we were intending for a portion of the match to be in kind from the local highway barns to be, to match the LWRP grant, and the Canal Corp would have matched as well. So the only way at this point to move forward doing design on a trail that would literally be about 2 miles, most of which is along Old State Route 4 going up Fort Ann. About the last 1,000 feet would be on Canal Corp land. We have already committed $24,000 in tourism tax funding. That money has been set aside for several years as cash match. But we would need to come up with about another $20,000. So I will honestly say I am very on the fence about this. I am frustrated because I personally have logged more than 150 hours over the last few years trying to get this done. I hate to throw that effort away. But in my heart, I think that if I asked the county to spend $50,000 on what would effectively be designing about 1,000 feet of trail, I don't think that that's necessarily good math. So what I am asking the committee for is if there is interest, if we can, if I can find a way to get some movement from Canal Corp to allow us to proceed with permitting, I could see spending that additional money to move forward on this project. If we can't get Canal Corp to move, I have a hard time asking that kind of money for literally what is 1,000 feet of trail. Because the 2 miles of trail that are on Old State Route 4, it's not a very heavily traveled road. A bicycle could ride right up the road. We can make it nicer and we can make it improvements to it. But the entire idea of this trail was to get it off of State Route 4 and on a scenic route that would have paralleled the canal. But unfortunately, Canal Corp has made that next to impossible. Comments?
Is it ultimately enough money and they're just pulling back wherever they can? I assume.
My belief is Canal Corp is one of the more expensive agencies to maintain. They currently exist under the umbrella of NIPA. I believe NIPA is trying to get costs under control. And I think the key statement for me was when I was told you're going to have money for future maintenance. That's kind of what tells me Canal Corp is potentially afraid that a project is going to happen and they're going to get stuck with the financial responsibility for maintaining and owning it. That's my guess.
Did you have a
You
question?
can tell I had a question coming.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's directly, it's not direct, so I'd rather that anybody ask questions from it. It's kind of an offshoot of this. whole good-
Was this to your last question that you asked before? About we own the
This
bridges? 'Cause
be
that's-
worthwhile endeavor.
I think we're gonna, that's, hey,
Our state politician,
I already know about that.
and do they,
Problem is time. Again, do I think that this can be fixed? Possibly within the next 2 months down to contract stage, probably not. And that's when our Canal Corp grant expires.
so in your question that you asked before with the bridges.
Yeah, so Laura, my
I
question
asked.
was, so we just found out a few weeks ago that, what is it, the Dix Bridge? What do
Yes,
they call it, Dix Hill Bridge?
Dix Bridge.
So we have to pay every 5 years, the cost to inspect that bridge.
That was just inspected underwater, yeah.
Share with Saratoga County, it's 80,000 total, but our share is 40. Do I have that right? Okay.
Somewhat, yeah.
That being said, that bridge, bit unique is the fact that does allow snowmobiles to go over, so those are motor vehicles. So I guess I could accept the fact that that's a cost that we have to bear, because it's a DMV registered vehicle that utilizes it. But in cases like in Kingsbury, we have bridges that now run on a bike path. Some are less than 25 feet, others are over 25 feet. Who's responsible for maintenance of those bridges and inspections of those bridges down the road? You know,
And I think that may very well be part of what's driving this Canal Corp decision. The answer is, I believe it's unclear. When Empire State Trail
That's not an
came,
answer.
yeah, when Empire State Trail came through, they tried to get municipalities to sign agreements saying that any part of the trail that's on your turf, you're gonna be responsible for. A lot of municipalities objected to that. So you're gonna find across the entire Empire State Trail, in some cases there are agreements, in some cases there are not. I believe we're responsible for signage, but I don't know that we have any actual obligation as a county for anything else. The local municipalities may or may not along parts of the trail. I believe that's what the problem is, that if Canal Corp ended up through default, because a local municipality isn't maintaining something, it's a Canal Corp asset, somebody has to do something about it. My guess is that Canal Corp is gonna end up on the hook for it. But when Empire State Trail came through, that was very unclear. There were a lot of questions that got asked about that. They tried to, again, get municipalities to sign agreements so that they were gonna be responsible for everything. But most municipalities, to my knowledge, did not.
Well, this kind of brings back, Bob might remember, this is probably a dozen years ago when the guy came from Richardson, from Clifton Park to tell us about the trails. And I got yelled at for trying to kill the messenger. When our roads were failing and there was no money to do any roads and they wanted us all to build trails. And I asked them why they were, trying to fund trails when they were doing 4-foot sections, strips on the thruway, the Northway.
Tourism generation.
And so it's like it was not, and so it sounds
The tourism, it's a huge tourism generator.
that 4 foot of space on the thruway is beautiful. Those being able to drive here. So I mean, it's amazing that they've never conquered that. They just keep making a bigger plan and it's a bigger bottomless pit, and then they wonder why they're out of money.
Well, where we are on this project, at this point, if we as a county don't want to commit to the potential to commit additional cash, we may have to abandon the project, because we cannot use any more in kind to pay for design. That's cash, that's an engineering cost. If
How
we
much?
can't do
Yeah.
construction,
Then we have to commit, how much?
so we've already committed 24.
Yeah.
I believe we need an additional 20. And I would take it out of our bed tax rainy day fund.
I think the bigger philosophical question is Canal Corp in the next 5 or 6 years on this whole project business with the permits and this sort of thing. Now, back in the Cuomo administration, when he was gung ho for these trails, we could have just called up down there and said, hey, Canal Corp's giving us trouble, and he would have fixed it. I'm not sure if we're at that point anymore with the governor's office. And I just don't have a good feeling about this in the next few years. Maybe we're gonna wind up throwing good money after bad here.
And I'm not, you throw this 50, but what's our long-term commitment? How much maintenance or whatever is going on? Somebody hits a pothole on one of these and breaks a leg or a neck, are we responsible for it? On these trails, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be owning it.
What's that?
No, all right, I know what you're talking about, when you go out and a bunch of 40 or Route 4, when it comes to Bridge of 22 goes across now. Once that's gonna be all person paid, and it's just residents that live on the road, it's not travel. Because of the underground cable that we're gonna be putting it through the center of the road.
You're talking about where old State Route 4
Yes.
is? Yes, and that's why I'm saying, technically that was part of the design. I don't honestly think we need to spend any money because it's a very low traveled road and it doesn't need much help. It's not until you actually get to Canal Corp land. And that land, which would require improvement, is maybe 1,000 feet. So this is why my heart says, do we really want to spend $50,000 just on design to get 1,000 feet?
That makes sense.
But now, wait a minute. Just, excuse me, Tim. We've spent 25. That's not, if we shut this down, we don't get that.
We haven't spent 25 yet. It was committed so far. We have done an excellent job of documenting in-kind services through all of the trail group meetings, the work that I've put into it, et cetera. So bottom line, the county investment is almost nothing.
Okay, thank you.
It's all time farm back.
It's all time.
I didn't want to
It's
walk.
just not all in sight.
No, and it's, like I said, my hours alone are over $150.
Hey, I, myself, if we were to vote right now today, I'd vote for that and not vote for the sign out front of the other county.
Oh, of course you're not.
I think tourism, like you said, generate revenue. I mean, it does.
I was being sarcastic when I said that trails generate tourism. I mean, that's what the state likes to
I took
say,
it,
but I
I
don't,
took it to heart.
yeah. I was laying it on pretty thick.
And we threw away 180,000 engineers in the parking lots. Don't even worry about that.
Laura, if we do nothing.
It'll be a
does that mean the
trail.
will just go more in? No.
That's what the trail is. Trail
Right, so
exists.
The trail exists, right?
Correct. Nothing will happen. The trail, the off-road area that goes, in Fort Ann comes off-road at Route 22, crosses over that bridge there, and then continues on State Route 4. Our plan, it was that area to get it off the state road. So nothing, if we do nothing and we allow these grants to lapse, that situation will continue. There will be no solution and a dangerous trail.
Right, it was
State
more
Route
about-
4.
It was more about not having fatalities
Correct.
in there because of that. If it gets used for more bikers and there's more traffic, you'll have more fatalities. It's just.
I will mention, so I drove up Route 4, this is over the summer, stopped at a restaurant up in Whitehall. Happened to meet two bikers, two professional looking bikers that have been going up State Route 4. And they turned around and said, where can we get an Uber? We can't do that. That is, these were professional bikers, like it's too dangerous. And that is the situation that we were trying to correct. Unfortunately, hands have been
Chopped off.
Don't have to keep on going up Route 4 and take a left and catch Uber that way.
So again, the question at this point is, I will honestly say that if I don't think that we can do anything more than get design done for that 1,000 feet of trail, I can in conscience recommend the county spend that money. The question is, if we can get concessions from Canal Corp in time to move forward, to actually get the trail further along, then it might be worth spending.
And after that 1,000 feet, you're back on Route 4, anyway, right?
You go up to Ryder Road and then you're back up on Route 4. And then we would have to work in future years
And you're right back in the same mess.
with CP.
And this is just design.
This is just as I.
Cut your losses. Yeah.
The original intention was for it to be design and construction, but if Canal Corp is saying they won't issue a permit, we can't do construction.
Which is also.
And the good news is if those bikers were correct, nobody will bike it for the most part. And if they ever want, they'll actually pony up the money when the time comes.
Well, I will honestly say that area towards the Whitehall area is wet. It's going to be expensive because there's going to have to be bridges. There's going to have to be boardwalk. That northern section of that trail was always going to be the most expensive.
Yeah.
So as a biker on the grid, there is a, if you want to take advantage of it, you just go through Whitehall, South William Street.
Upland, yeah.
You can ride your bike on that, and then you take it, so you go into the village, Whitehall, you come out, I think there's American Legion Post right in the corner. You go up over there, and then you continue to head towards Champlain, it gets narrow, but we're not talking about that section either, are we? Is that 22? It goes up?
Yeah.
Is that kind of road?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's narrow, but we're not talking about that section either, so honestly, I wouldn't spend any more money on it, because there is a way to get around. Whitehall.
So we-
You don't need to go down Route 4, it's
we
pretty safe.
could, as a county, publish like trail maps through tourism on alternate routes. Empire State Trail is where Empire State Trail is. All we can do is say, hey, don't go there, go on a safer route, which might be here.
Sam, what's that road that goes back to Superstition Farm? That
Dewey's Bridge.
Dewey's Bridge Road is a safe road. That's where most of the guys are riding now. Anyway. And then they pick up Whitehall and then they go up Tycon Road.
We don't
Usually
get
they're coming
that.
south from Tycon to Roga over most of the local people.
So what? They take you, the bike trail, you probably where it goes down, but it comes out of 40 and down Canal Street. And it crosses the bridge up on the called Clay Hill, you go over this treacherous turn, I don't know if you've ridden up it or not. It's just this blind side, you can't, either direction, you can't see anybody coming on a bike. But they put the trail there up through Clay Hill, up to where they end up talking to Dewey's Bridge Road. You can keep going on straight and come up around, or you can take the bicycle trail off from it. That they put, which comes up into 22 up in what, in Comstock.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
I do, but that's not real maintained. Well, there's actually weed growing over the trail now.
Shouldn't be, it's a-
Well,
Well,
I
highway
should
department
say
said-
last year.
Yes, it was last year, shouldn't be this year, but it was last year. I don't know.
I don't think you should spend any more money on it. There's ways to get through there.
Okay.
Without spending. It's kind of
Is that the committee consensus?
Maybe we should start Uber up and back with that money instead, make some money out of this. All the thousands of bikers that are gonna come
No,
through there.
just get some Airbnbs in Fort Ann, because it's a dead end there. Now people need a place to stay. They can't go any further.
Can't, there's no cell service.
We got it.
yeah, but they can go to bed at Uber. Enjoy the day.
So, consensus from the committee, do we want to see if you can get those concessions from Canal Corp or just let the money go?
It'd be nice to know where Canal Corp is. It's worth seeing if you can get the concessions. Doesn't mean we still do it.
Right, okay, so.
I'd just like to see how bad they are to work with.
And we're
Because it
not
sounds like
letting
it's getting
anybody go,
worse.
really.
No, not yet.
Well,
Not just our money, it's all that we're budgeting.
based on how rude they were last time, Laura, did you talk to them? And the way they treated you about, they're just kind of up the table, don't worry about it, I don't even know what's about it. I mean,
Well, we have some advocates within the Canal Corp that are trying to initiate some internal discussions. Again, I have a guess as to where this messaging is coming from, and I suspect it is top-down NIPA trying to cut costs at Canal Corp. So even if Canal Corp as an entity says yes, that's no guarantee that NIPA isn't gonna pull the plug out from under them.
So if that's the case, though, doesn't that mean the bridge to East Street will be closed? If they're really worried about money, and I would think the canal could be closed going north to Whitehall.
They've done it before.
Yeah. I would think we're gonna lose that. If that's the issue.
You always do with screwy when they take Route 4 and call it Route 9 bike trip.
Well, all you need is a little line over the top of the floor.
They call it Route 9 bike trip,
I know.
and they put it on Route 4 and 22.
I'm still looking for consensus from the committee.
I support the idea of not putting any more money in and just pursue Canal Corp to see if they'll change their mind and not gamble, because of all we are.
Change your mind on extending the deadline.
Extending
Because it's 67 days, 13 hours.
Correct, and we'd have to have a contract from Canal Corp by the end of December. To extend the grant, because I
And
would.
you said really, there's no option in your recommendation.
I would not pull the trigger on spending money without a signed contract from Canal Corp.
Well, we'll see if they give us that contract, if not, then we know.
Well, yeah, you're only going 67
I
days.
accept your recommendation.
Yeah, I guess my
And
bigger
I'm
concern.
back to supporting your guys.
My concern is, were we asking Laura keep banging her head against the wall. I'd rather leave it Laura's, or that Laura does what Laura seems fit. Because she's the one putting in all the effort and getting smacked for it, so. You know, it's according to how you feel, where you wanna go with it.
That's just for design too. No, this is a dead issue.
Right.
Yeah,
Don't bother.
if,
Okay. All right. Any,
you did good.
Any other questions on, Fort Ann Whitehall Trail? Moving on to the USDA EDA grant.
People working hard on it, like, oh.
a lot of people have been working hard. Okay, so just a quick update, we did submit the EDA recompete grant, which is intended to provide assistance to LEAP for workforce development. The application consisted of a request to hire a consultant to analyze kind of how LEAP does things, what are best practices, what can be changed, and it also included funding to hire a project manager that would potentially be turned into a business liaison, which is going to give LEAP the ability to better directly communicate back and forth with employers in the county. So the application is in, we'll see what happens. The other one is the USDA application. That was the $1 million grant that we got from Congresswoman Stefanik. We were required, because this is congressionally directed funding, the application is slightly different than like a competitive application because we are promised the money, but we still have to meet their requirements. So it required putting together a whole lot of documents which have been submitted or being reviewed. So again, we can have more broadband discussion later, but the quick summary of where we are. We have about 2,000 unserved or underserved, which is DSL, basically addresses within the county. This grant is going to fully provide equipment to about 500 residences. So the entire cost of all the equipment will be covered. And these addresses were determined, they had to be at specific speed, which is serviced by 100 by 20. So the residents were determined based on proximity to tower, which ones Hudson Valley Wireless could serve at those speeds, et cetera. So that is progressive. Meanwhile, as we have continued to work with the State Connect All office, as you know, we've had this federal FCC mapping process, which is identifying, hopefully much more accurately, and I can truly say it is more accurate, but it's still not 100% right, where our true unserved are. I identified close to 350 addresses that were funded by the state of New York to Verizon to provide service in the towns of White Creek, Cambridge, and Jackson. 350 of those addresses got identified on the FCC map as unserviceable. So I challenged them, and Verizon has conceded on all of them.
They did not serve.
They told the FCC they didn't serve them. They have now told New York State that they will. So there were actually a huge number of addresses. If you go down the County Route 59 in Cambridge, there were a couple of hundred of the addresses were down that road, and then there were some other random addresses again on White Creek and Jackson.
So that 3,000 comes off the 2,000 or 350 come off the 2,000.
So what now we started out with 2,000, we're covering about 500 with Hudson Valley Wireless, 350 are going to be served by Verizon, which leaves us with about 1,200 addresses that I will say, based on the bids that we got back from our proposal, are going to take somewhere between 12 to $14 million to get covered. So we are continuing to work with the Connect All office to try and secure funding in addition to what the county has set aside to get new coverage.
And what have we got for set aside?
Either 3.5 or 4.5, depending on
What day of the month it is?
something like that.
Oh, we have the 3.6 plus the million.
4.6, and the number was 12, is a minimum 12, 14?
That's $120,000 per.
Yeah,
Oh, we
that's-
got bids of up to $30,000 an address. An address.
The math isn't mapping.
Huh?
The math isn't mapping.
Yeah, it is, man.
Sorry, got math.
Well, I mean,
It's free, it's.
the range of bit was sort of depending on the location, the town, et cetera. There was a wide variety, but based on those remaining addresses, which are ending up being like town of Fort Ann and some other remote areas that are the most expensive to serve. So again, we're trying to make the determination, are there alternative technologies? Are we directly looking for funding? Are there other programs that can assist? So we're not done yet.
And are they playing the game?
So I just want to understand this. So Verizon told the FCC that they're unserviceable, but they have told us that they were serviceable, so location, or they.
We challenged it.
We challenged it. We mapped them out. More of them.
They couldn't prove to be right. So they gave.
Well, at issue was that whether they serve them or not doesn't matter. They were paid by New York State
Okay,
through the Broadband for All to provide service to those addresses.
so that's my point. They had told New York State that,
They took the contract.
right, but yet they told
And that
FCC
provides
that it was unserviceable.
So New York State is still auditing the results of the Broadband for All
Well, they'll have
program,
for
which is gonna be a complicated process, because again, when you've got the broadband office at the time executed contracts with providers who are gonna do whatever they said they're gonna do, and then you do that, and then you wanna audit that process and say, is that what they really did? Well, that audit process is pretty complicated because there were changes throughout the program, et cetera. So whether New York State would have eventually caught that or not, I don't know, but the fact is, we caught it and it's been corrected.
It works, because I had the experience where I asked to have my house in Tucson Road be done. And they quoted me a pretty horrifying number, and I said, fine, do it. And so after a lot of negotiating around, they did it. And then about 2 months later, they sent me a check for what I'd sent. So I think what happened was, the same kind of thing she's talking about. And I called their bluff and I said, go ahead and do it. And they realized that they'd already been paid.
Right.
So they had to give me service and they had to give me my money back.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, this happens to be Verizon, but one of the other things that I identified is, as you may recall, when Spectrum did their merger, there were 144,000 addresses that they were required to provide service to. The state did not fund them for, but it was part of their contract as part of the state agreeing to that merger. So Spectrum created a list of addresses that they submitted to the state that said, in obligation of this requirement, this is who we're serving. I found about 60 addresses that they reported to New York State as part of that contract. And they reported to the FCC, no service. So I sent those to the state and said, you can reconcile these. I mean, if they weren't paid, but it was part of the approval of the franchise agreement. So I will honestly say, and I have said this to the Connect All office, I know what it took to evaluate Washington County. I cannot imagine trying to do this for the entire state. I mean, there is the data that's out there is infinitely better than it was when it was done by census tract, but it's still not 100% right.
And you've got somebody working for you that's willing. You hit those in that. You guard and double check. It's just easy, it's easy to go. Okay. But. Doing that is to reduce.
Which is, and I will say that Connect All office has been great to work with, and they have been appreciative of the effort that we put in there is kind of help them to determine what they should be looking for in other areas. And I think that's why they're so willing to work with us to try and find a solution to get our last 1,200 served.
Good, send us $8 million.
Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna happen, but well, you know what? Who knows? But
You never know.
if it goes through the BEAD program funding, then we're still 5 years out. I don't like 5 years out.
They started setting goals on it.
Any other questions on the USDA or the EDA grants at this point?
Send them right on the show.
Great job, Laura.
Yes.
I tried to be fast.
Any other business? Additional business from the committee? With no other business, No other questions, comments, that being said, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Laura, I want to thank you for all your hard work.